So today we're speaking with Eric Svenson, Senior CEO of Plating Resources Incorporated, and we're going to be talking about their buffered sulfate adjuster product in today's Tech Talk. But for those who may not know, Eric, can you give us a little background on Plating Resources and all that you all offer the finishing industry?
Sure, Tim, I'd love to, and I appreciate the courtesy in having me on and talk about this thing. Our lineage of the company, Plating Resources, goes back to 1931, founded by my grandfather. So we actually have been in business a little over 90 years. We're veteran-owned, and we're now in our fourth generation. Our company specializes in a small niche of the electroplating industry, and that's hard chrome plating. We have a line of chemical services, technology, again, all aligned for the hard chrome. And the reason we focus on that is because we see hexavalent hard chrome being critical for America's industry and for her defense. So that's what we specialize in. And we have a full line of products, including engineered plating equipment, turnkey plating systems, complete line of chemicals, including high purity chromic acid, catalysts, buffers, various bath additives, strippers, anode cleaners, surface activators, and so forth. And we also supply lab equipment and reagents to platers that want to do their own analysis in-house. And finally, our last product in the product line is MicroTough. And that's a polymer that's applied after plating, after chroming, that increases the corrosion resistance and the lubricity of the deposit. So that's our product line. And our service package, we do bath analysis, obviously. We have laboratory services. We provide on-site and off-site technical assistance, design containment systems and zero-discharge recovery systems, and also do system upgrades and system evaluations for customers. Gotcha. And our latest package is the sustainable hard chrome, which I think you featured before, and I very much appreciate it, where essentially there's zero chrome discharge out of the stack, or everything is recovered and recaptured, recycled, and reused. And our goal was to essentially hit zero, so regardless of what the regulators do, they can never get down to zero. So the hex chrome platers are going to be in good shape, safe.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's one of the things I've heard you talk about and read about, is that your contention is using hex chrome is really used properly. That's the used properly with proper procedures is fine, right? It can be, and it can meet the rules and requirements set down by it. So, and really a lot of finishers probably are not using it correctly or not having it set up correctly. And if they do, they should be able to meet the regulations, correct?
That's correct. They can. Like I say, their stack discharges are zero. Employees on the OSHA PEL tested up to like 150 times below the PEL level. And all this is done without having to use a fume suppressant.
Right.
So it's all in the design and the proper operation of the plating system.
Right. Yeah, and I would encourage anybody to go to plating.com and look at some of your literature, look at some of the things you've got, because you fully explained that to some people. But let's move on to the buffer sulfate adjuster. I thought that was quite interesting in reading some of the background. So let's talk about that. It's adding sulfate to hexavalent chrome plating baths. Tell us what the product does and the advantages that it has for shops.
Sure. Well, as most everyone in this industry knows, that a small amount of sulfate is needed in the chrome bath. Without sulfate being present there wouldn't be any chrome deposition. And the sulfate is a ratio to the chromic acid. And that ratio can be anywhere from 80 to 1 to almost up to 300 to 1, depending on the bath type and any other catalyst used. What's critical is maintaining that ratio. The sulfate has historically been gathered by using concentrated sulfuric acid. And there's some problems with that we discovered over the years. And for the first part, sulfuric is very corrosive. So it's dangerous to store, it's dangerous to handle. It's also very exothermic. And by that, I mean it gives off a substantial amount of heat when you add it to a water-based solution, which a chrome bath is. In fact, the exothermic nature is so bad, we've seen cases where if the operator adds it too fast, it actually boils back, almost boils instantly at the bath surface, and splashes back in on the operator's face, and obviously that's not a good thing. It's very dangerous. So we were looking over the years for better ways to handle it, and that included maybe just adding it to a cold bath and add it slowly and then distribute it evenly, and all those things help. But people being what they are, they're invariably in a hurry.
Right.
That's usually
you say it's even hard to measure. Correct. It's even hard to measure it properly sometimes.
It is because the sulfuric acid is so concentrated, and the amount needed is so critical that it's very, very easy to overshoot it. And when you do that, it really messes up the bath.
Yeah. How long have you been researching this? It's been around. I mean, this issue's been around for a while, right? How long have you been? You said you kind of started looking at what alternatives do we have?
The issue goes back to when I started in like 1961. It's been ever since. We've been looking for ways to get around it. We tried pre-diluting the sulfuric acid so that that helped with its exothermic issues. They could add it safely, but it was still corrosive and it was still difficult to measure. So it didn't solve the problem. We started researching this buffered additive about a year and a half or so ago. It was in the lab for a little over a year, and we finally had some test sites out in the field and proved very, very successful.
Right. So tell us about the steps for a new bath makeup. What are some of those in using the adjuster with that?
Well, making up a new bath is a little complicated than a lot of people think it is, and there's actually two phases. There's a preparation phase, and then there's the actual bath makeup phase. And I'm going to refer to my notes here, because there's a lot of steps. I don't want to miss any.
Sure.
I presume we're starting with an existing tank that's been it's contaminated, has to be pumped out, and therefore be replaced. So the first thing to do is to don any personal protection equipment. Make sure you've got that on. Once the tank is pumped out, you want to remove the anodes, clean them, and then you want to remove any debris that might be in the tank, which typically is anode sludge, maybe some drop parts, etc. And then while the tank is empty, before you add anything, let's take a look at the equipment. Let's inspect the tank liner, the anodes, the cooling coils, the heaters, agitation, etc. Once all that's done, then it's probably a good idea to clean and retorque the copper bus bars. So now we're ready to go. And as far as the bath makeup, the first thing you would do is want to fill a tank about 2/3 full with pure water, RODI type water. Make sure there's no impurities in it. And then turn on the ventilation, the agitation systems. And the next thing to do is to add the chromic acid. I back up a little bit. If we're going to use liquid chrome, I would add that before adding the water, just so the volume doesn't get out of hand. Then you want to add any catalysts, any buffers, etc., bath additives, etc. And finally, the buffered sulfate adjuster. But I would recommend that they only add like 90% of the calculated amount, because there's frequently sulfate sometimes in the water supply if they don't use pure water, and also in the chromic acid. There's almost always some sulfate in the chrome. So if they added 100%, they would always end up being high. So we like to add only 90% initially. And then once the bath is all mixed up and agitated, typically for about an hour or so, take a bath sample and have it analyzed for all the ingredients, chrome, catalyst, and sulfate, and make any final additions. And there's more than likely they're going to need a small amount of extra bulfate adjuster.
Gotcha. And like you said, a lot of it is very critical, measuring and following proper steps, right? I mean, and some people get away from that, and that's what causes a lot of the problems. You've seen that over the years, where they've drifted a little bit, right? They've drifted from the procedures and measurements.
Yeah, and when we have a customer that needs to make up a new bath, we actually type out a very detailed procedural list for them to do. They can follow step by step, just to make sure they don't overlook anything and make sure the calculations, the chemicals are right and everything.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And like I said, you mentioned earlier about why you came up with this product. You kept seeing this issue kind of come up. Is this what shops were asking you to do, is kind of help them solve this a little bit of, again, it sounds like a lot of it may have been, a little bit of operator error, but really making it precise so that, these baths are really dialed in, and using this adjuster, buffer sulfate adjuster, seems like it would be exactly that. It answers that need to really dial it in and have it very precise.
It is, and because it's a dry powder, it's very easy to measure. A simple scale is all you need.
Right.
They could almost hit the sulfate number dead nuts on the head.
Right. And so anybody that wants to order this, they can certainly visit plating.com, talk to you a little bit more. I'm sure you're willing to kind of talk to them about the issues that they have, but they can reach out to you that way, correct? Through your website.
Absolutely. We do a lot of tech service, and our whole goal is to help the hard chrome industry.